I've been meaning to get into Annie Ernaux ever since 2022 when she won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and because my list is as high as the sky, I just didn't have quite the chance until now. With this book, A Man's Place, it's a short biographical piece about her father. This is kind of what she's known for, these almost anthropological works that examine the human condition. It's only about 90 pages, it's quite minimal, almost unsentimental, and absolutely devastating in its own way. I've heard that Ernaux is known for writing in a very clear, stripped-down style, and that's what she gives in this book. She doesn't dramatize, she doesn't romanticize, she observes and describes as a historian would. In this book, she traces her father's life from growing up in poverty in rural France to eventually owning a small grocery shop and cafe. And there's nothing quite remarkable about this man. This is a portrait of someone who would have been forgotten, someone very average, just like you and me. But not only that, someone whose life was ruled by necessity and survival, rarely by choice or ambition. One moment in the book that really stuck with me was when her father was catching wasps with a handkerchief and dropping them on a coal stove, and he watches them twist as the wasps are consumed by the fire. That's what this book feels like. We're watching someone being slowly consumed by the role he was placed in, not because he chose it, but because there was no other option. And I feel like that's what the title means, A Man's Place. Not the place you find, not the place you fight for, but the place society decides is yours as a man. And also not just necessarily as a man, but more generally as a person. I don't think Ernaux meant this to be an examination of the male condition exclusively, which is why I feel like the English title is misleading in that sense, because it's A Man's Place in English, whereas the original title in French is simply La Place. Another aspect that I really love about this book is that Ernaux does not make a judgment out of her father's life. She doesn't say that it was a good life or a bad life, that all of it was worth it in the end. This is not that kind of story. It doesn't have any of that American literary instinct of creating meaning out of something, like a rags to riches story where the struggle was meaningful because of the rewards. She paints a very vivid portrait and just gives it to us. And in many ways, that made me think of my own parents as well, because this also could have been about them. People who lived not for their wants, but to fulfill an expectation that society had of them and to avoid the shame of falling out of their place. So if you haven't read Annie Ernaux, I think A Man's Place is a perfect place to start. It's short, but it's sharp, and it really stays with you.